Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. Hit that like button, leave a positive comment, or hit subscribe to get alerted when new episodes drop. All of this will help keep the project going. Thank you for your support and enjoy the episode. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How'd Her Career Get There? And my guest today is Jessica Quincosa, who is the Executive Director of Community Legal Services, also recently named Daily Record Top 100 Woman. So we will get to that and a whole bunch of other good stuff about Jessica's background. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to this. So let's get started with, we'll start present day and then we'll go backwards.
Sure.
Give our audience, if you will, an overview of Community Legal Services.
Sure. So we are a legal services provider in Prince George's County. We provide civil legal services, including eviction prevention. We have a foreclosure program, a bankruptcy program, and a pretty large family law program where we provide free legal services to folks that are income qualified for our services. In 2020, we expanded our eviction prevention program to Anne Arundel County, and our staff is at the courthouse same day in the Glen Burnie and the Annapolis District Courthouse, again, for income eligible tenants that need representation in their landlord-tenant cases. And as of 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, we expanded to Montgomery County, and we're now there at the Wednesday docket, assisting same day, and we also handle cases ahead of time. So in the last few years, we've expanded our eviction prevention program, but we've also expanded our domestic violence program. So we have a same-day program in Prince George's County where we help survivors of domestic violence with their temporary protective orders. All within the idea of trying to connect with folks sooner rather than later throughout the process. So if they come in for a protective order and they end up needing help with a divorce or a custody case, ideally we're able to continue that representation either through our staff, our direct representation staff, or we have a panel of attorneys that take cases through us. That's only in Prince George's County for right now, but we work with other legal services providers throughout the state to connect folks that need assistance.
So who is kind of the, I don't know if target audience is the right way to say it, but the primary users of your service, and how would they get in touch with you? I mean, is it people that need representation but maybe can't afford it or don't know where to go? And then do they just reach out to Community Legal Services? What's the facilitation?
So it depends. So there's some clients that are income eligible, and if you call 211, some people usually just call that whenever they need help, or 311, and they end up getting connected to us, particularly through eviction prevention. It's tenants that have fallen on hard times, they miss a rental payment, or also tenants who have received a notice to vacate. Their lease has expired and their landlord doesn't want to renew. We also have tenants who have received what's called a breach of lease notice. Allegedly, the landlord thinks you did something in your lease that you don't think you did. So those are a few of the tenants that usually reach out to us. And the way to reach out to us is either on our website, contacting our phone number, or our email address, info@clspgc.org. I'll give you all of that information so you can share it. We try to be as open as possible to make sure it's easy for clients to reach out to us. Clients can reach out to us at the courthouse. We have a standing clinic in the Upper Marlboro Courthouse in Prince George's County where clients can come in and get brief advice. There's some litigants that's really all they need for their custody or the divorce case. So we're able to meet them there. But then there's clients that need additional services. They need representation. They need a variety of different resources. So we try to connect them with what we can try to provide them with direct services if they're within our income guidelines, which I believe is 150% of the median income in Maryland. I can also provide you that. That's through our funder. Those are the restrictions we have. But we are in the community a lot. A lot of our staff are at different community events throughout the year. We'll attend in Prince George's County, different council members, different delegates. They have different fairs on Saturdays. At least one of our legal assistants or our staff is there, and they'll take their information. And we're really trying our hardest to limit the barriers to get our services. And sometimes folks are over income for our services, but we will refer them to civil justice, for instance, which has a sliding fee scale for different family law cases. They have a panel of attorneys and they work with their private practitioners and they offer different services, or will refer somebody who's substantially over income to a local bar association so they can receive recommendations for different attorneys that may be able to provide them with assistance.
It is, I don't know if amazing is the right word, interesting to me. I recently, over the past couple of years, have several friends who have gotten divorced, but a handful of situations that have had, unfortunately, some domestic, abuse situations and and from there, just not pretty divorce situations, I'll say. And I don't think I quite understood or realized this sounds really silly as I say it aloud, but how important it is for people to get the proper representation. And if you don't have it, the repercussions of that. And sometimes when people don't have the right resources, they're in there with either underqualified attorneys, or just not in there with good representation, and the ripple effect to them, is quite significant. So just, I guess that's my way of expressing, there's obviously a clear need for what, community legal services does. I think I've witnessed it more, I shouldn't say firsthand, second and third hand over the past year or so with some of my friends going through some challenges. So
I think particularly when you're talking about domestic violence, there's the imbalance of power with the two parties. So for somebody to not be represented versus someone against somebody that is represented, I think presents a special challenge in domestic violence situations. And for everyone, sometimes they think that if they appear by themselves, the judge is going to, look at the case and maybe give them a little bit of grace because they are self-represented. And while they will give them grace, they can't be their attorney. They just, their job is to call the balls and the strikes. That's what they say. So even if there is a serious, disproportionate outcome, it's really the judge's job to see the information that's presented before them, and it has to be presented per the rules. And there's really no leeway as far as you're self-represented. So you're at a huge disadvantage, not just if the other person's represented, but more so if the other person's represented, because they have somebody that can arguably present all of the information that's needed to make a substantial decision in your life. And for custody and visitation, the judge is getting a small snippet of what's been happening for many years and is going to make a decision that will change or, will change how your family's looking moving forward. So I think for everyone that's not represented, it is a disadvantage. And at least knowing what what your rights and resources are is really helpful.
I think you nailed it there, right? It's almost like the nuances of the law don't give, you have to understand the nuances of the law. Which obviously qualified attorneys do. So, which self-represented folks sometimes don't get those nuances, and you don't get the empathy doesn't make up for your lack of knowledge on the nuances of the law. Let's talk about Jessica when she was a kid and kind of how we got to where we are today. So give us just a little bit of background, where are you from, only child, what were your parents like, what were you like as a kid? And then we'll kind of go through the timeline of how you got where you are today.
So I grew up in Miami. My parents are both immigrants. They came to the United States from Cuba in the early 70s. I grew up in a predominantly Spanish-speaking household. My parents were divorced when I was really young. And so we grew up, while my parents were divorced, we grew up a tightly knit, extended family because my grandparents had come from Cuba too. So it was an interesting dynamic, and living in a different state and from my entire family is always challenging because I don't get to see them as often. In middle school and high school, I was really good at school. I ended up going to a dual enrollment high school in Miami, which was on a college campus, which as a high school student, I thought was incredibly fun. Probably not, in hindsight, probably needed more supervision. But we had a great time, and it was a really small school. So they dedicated a lot of resources to us, particularly for those of us that were first generation and didn't really understand how to apply for college and all of that. So that was incredibly helpful. I ended up going to the University of Miami. I lived at home, which was pretty common for folks in Miami that attend a school close to home. Maybe not as fun as you would expect. I've heard how much fun people have in college. And then I moved away and I went to New England School of Law in Boston for 3 years. And I ended up moving to DC, one, because the weather in Boston was brutal. And I just thought there would be more opportunities in Maryland, in DC for things that I wanted to do. I really wanted to practice nonprofit. Initially, when I graduated from law school, I didn't find a nonprofit position. So I ended up working at a private firm. And then I ended up moving to a small law firm in Annapolis. And then I enjoyed both of those experiences, but I really wanted to work at a nonprofit. It's what I wanted to do when I went to law school. And I ended up working at Maryland Legal Aid, which is the largest provider of legal services in the state. And then the opportunity to become executive director in Prince George's County presented itself. And that was about 8 years ago. And I'm really glad I took the opportunity. It's been a lot of work, particularly during the pandemic when everything was closed and no one knew what was going to happen after. It's always a challenge, but we've been able to, during my tenure, increase our services solely from Prince George's County, like I said, to now Anne Arundel and most recently Montgomery County. Additionally, our budget went from about 1.2 million to this year we're about 6 million. So we've increased our staff 5 or 6-fold. When I started, it was about 10 to 12 people, and now there's 49 or 50 people working here.
Wow, quite the growth. What when you were a kid, what were you always interested in the law or being a lawyer, or were you thinking, what did you want to do when you were a kid?
Initially, apparently I wanted to be a dentist. I found some old things at one point when I was moving. And then I wanted to be a lawyer. As long as I can remember, I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know any lawyers. No one in my family was a lawyer. I most recently remembered why. I think about in 6th grade, Janet Reno, who was I think the Attorney General of Florida at the time, maybe, came to visit the school. And I thought it was so cool. There was this woman that was talking about all these interesting things, and that piqued my interest. And then I just, for whatever reason, just kept thinking I wanted to be a lawyer.
How do you think about that nowadays? And I'll categorize it as representation, but just somebody who, and however you identify, right? But somebody who looks like you or has a similar background as you, how much do you think representation matters? Like Janet Reno doesn't come into your school. Do you still end up in the same place?
So I don't know the answer as to whether or not if she hadn't come in at that point. I think representation it matters incredibly. I identify as Hispanic. I'm very proud to be Hispanic and the children of immigrants. I've taken that very seriously, particularly when we hire staff. I'm very proud of the fact that our staff reflects the community we serve. Most of the folks are either women or men of color. And I want to say over half the staff speak another foreign language. Either we were native speakers or were foreign born. So I've taken that very seriously, particularly when we hire. I think the other aspect of that is I've also taken a very open approach to what we consider experience as far as for our staff. We have a lot of staff that have never worked at a law firm before, which presents its own challenges, especially when you're trying to teach folks some of the office skills. But one of she's probably going to get upset, but one of our paralegals came in. I want to say she was pretty new out of high school, and she had been working at her parents' store. And we were the first place that she would have had, like, I guess, a professional job. And when we were looking over her resume, I just thought she had worked at a store, so she had customer service. And I thought, she's going to do great. She's now managing other staff. So I think there's skills that you can, that relate, that aren't necessarily working at a law law firm or at an office. So we've made it maybe an unwritten policy that we try really hard to give people opportunities to learn different skills. And maybe what you did before isn't necessarily what you're going to do here, but you have some of the social and the professional skills that are needed, and we'll teach you the actual office skills part.
And what was like when you were a kid? What were the well, I won't even say when you were a kid, kind of that you've taken through life, whether it's from your parents or somebody else, but what from your childhood? Like, who was the person or people, and what were the one or two traits that you remember learning or being reinforced for that you think have kind of carried you through to where you are today?
I think just generally my family was really hardworking, and there was a lot of, realizing that things are not just going to be handed to you. You have to work hard to get those. So that's kind of carried me through even when it's been hard. And, I will use the pandemic as part of like not knowing what's going to happen, particularly with the stress of knowing that I'm managing about 30 people who at that time were relying on us to make sure that they were getting paid. So I feel like the only thing I could do is just continue to work hard and explore other opportunities for funding. And just that kind of carried me through it, knowing that the only thing I could do is try to control what I could. And one thing I can do is I can work hard and just at least show that I'm intending to do what I can.
And when you were your parents, you being and I apologize, I said this earlier, were you born in Cuba or you were first generation?
No, so I'm first generation born here.
Okay.
And I'm first generation that graduated from college and law school.
That was leading me to where my next question was. What was the type of family or parental support that you had in that? Go for your dreams, go get it, or there's different mentalities, right?
Yes.
So what was your experience?
So my parents were both. I think my mom may have been the first person in her family to graduate from high school, and then she got married young, which at the time was what folks were doing. So when I was younger, they were just go for it, do whatever you need to do. If there was any opportunity, obviously they didn't have as many opportunities as I did now for my kids, knowing how this, how some of this stuff works. But if there was an opportunity, I had the opportunity to go to dual enrollment high school. They supported it. They were driving me about 30 minutes every morning, maybe even more, to this high school because it was what was a great option for me. And they were supportive in that sense. As far as like now I see how some of the college students are doing all of these applications that was on me. And I had support at school for that part of the component. My parents, my dad was a telephone repairman and my mom's a cosmetologist. So the actual going to college part of it, they didn't really understand that as much, but they were supportive as well as much as they could be.
It's my husband's similar, firstborn. His parents were immigrants and he's firstborn here, and it was a similar, I think, experience that he had of like the system and how to navigate the system of whether it's college applications or you can go play sports in high school and then what that might mean. It's like that part of it, just being in a new place for them wasn't necessarily something they just didn't understand the system of that. So it was left a lot for, I think the kid quite often to figure it out versus versus having parents that understand the system. And then some parents that are also the other end of the spectrum over the top in terms of, filling out their kids' applications. But I won't go there. That's an entirely different rant podcast, which I'll spare. Talk a little bit about, I want to stay on the family thread, but kind of bring it to a little bit more kind of present day. You're obviously very intelligent, very ambitious, very hardworking. Talk about the integration of family. And obviously you mentioned that you were a mother. Talk about the integration of family and career. And what's the part that people don't talk about? What's the best part of it? What's the part that's maybe misunderstood? Do you feel like sometimes you're failing at all of it?
Yes. I think the whole thing of being great at everything all the time is a myth. There's sometimes where I feel like I'm doing a great job at parenting and then I fall on my face, and it's a very humbling experience when my kids do something. So I have 3 boys under the age of 16, which is its own separate challenge. And if I see my friends with girls, or I guess more well-mannered children. My children are fighting constantly and bickering, and it's a lot. So they understand sort of what I do. I don't think my youngest really comprehends exactly what I do. So that's something that I try to explain to them, and explain, like, I've chosen to have a career where I help other people. I think it's part of the social contract. I've had opportunities. It's my job essentially to open opportunities for other people. So while they have new opportunities that maybe I didn't have, they still have to work towards them. And my oldest is almost applying for college. Like he's a sophomore. So I have that challenge of, I don't want to be that parent that's doing all your applications for you, but I'm gently pushing him and I'm pushing him harder because it's his personality. But it's a challenge all the time. Some days I feel like I'm doing really well at work and not doing so well at home. And it's allowing yourself grace, which is easier said than done. I understand that. To know that you're not going to be perfect everywhere all the time. And every once in a while, one of my children will say something that makes me feel like, oh, they get it. Like they get that I'm doing this not just for work, but I'm also doing this for them. Mm-hmm. It's far and few in between, but then I try to hold on to that for as long as I can. So I do think there's maybe a myth, particularly for moms, that you have to do everything all the time. I pick and choose what I do. So one year I decided to be room mom at school. That is not my strength. Mm-hmm. I'll throw money at, I'll give money to a gift. I do like attending the class parties. So I'll do the class parties because it's a discrete task that I can do and I enjoy doing it. I also enjoy doing field trips, not all the time, but it's also the same thing. Like it's something that I can commit to on a day. So my kids know. My oldest has asked that I no longer, he's in high school. He doesn't want to be attending stuff. But those are the things that I've given myself the opportunity to say no to. I've had to say no to some other things for work purposes. So I pick and choose a little bit more now. I try to multitask probably more than I would like. But so I saw a podcast, I think it was with Glennon Doyle's spouse, yes, where she said kids don't want their parents to come to their sports practices. And that may or may not be true, but I've decided it's true. So when I go to the sport practices, I actually just do work in the car. I attend the games, but I can't, it's just a lot. So those are things that the older they've gotten, the more I've kind of made decisions that work for me and for them. I'm still at all your stuff, but I may not be paying attention during practice. Mm-hmm. So
what, when you look back, if we're going to back to kind of earlier in your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I wish one thing that I would have done earlier is invest in networking. I really thought that asking people for help to make connections was something that was off-putting to other people. And I think it was a mistake. I think asking people for advice, asking people if they'd, get coffee with you to talk to you about career goals and opportunities is something that you should really try to reach out to. Most people would be more than happy to give you a half hour or an hour, particularly if you really appreciate their advice and their suggestions. Reaching out to mentors or friends who then become mentors, I think is incredibly important. Also knowing, my friend brought this up at one day and it's really stuck with me. There's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And some people can be both, but really this mentor is the one that helps you with your career and gives you advice on it. And the sponsor gets you into the rooms that give you those opportunities for next steps. So it's that person that talks you up at a meeting that you may or may not be at. And it's the person that vouches for you. So having both is incredibly important, particularly when you want to grow in your career and you need different opportunities. And even if you think that you're going to do this one thing and this is where you see the path, is being open to opportunities that you may not have thought about and how those open up other options for you. So I think being a little more flexible in what you think you should be doing is something I would also give myself as advice.
What do you, when you think about like the mentor sponsor component of it, how do you think about like, so people that maybe start and they have, like I was at a college campus the other day and this person was asking, one of the students was asking me a question, like, I have no like their words, I have no network. I'm not from around here. I don't know anybody. Like I have whoever's at this college. How do you advise like people from there building their network, or like, how would you like to be approached if like somebody hears this podcast and they're like, oh my gosh, like Jessica sounds amazing. I'm interested in following her path or learning more about that. Like, how do people approach or start to expand their network in a way that doesn't feel one-sided, gimme, gimme, gimme? Because the other side of that is the mentor and the sponsor also have their whole entire lives, right? That they're trying to operate. So how do you think about that?
So for the second part, which is if somebody wants to reach out to me, sending me an email is an easy way to connect. And if I have the time and I can meet you, or if I think I can actually help you, I'm more than happy to do it. Enough. So that's that one. For as far as your network, I think particularly when you're not from here and you don't have connections here. So I didn't grow up here. I don't have connections here. And even if I had stayed in Miami, my parents didn't have those connections. So what I did was when I started one of my first jobs, I looked at what my boss had done to do connections. I'll just use the legal part of it so she had joined a bar association. Through that bar association, there was a leadership academy. And through that leadership academy, she had made connections and then used that to build upon it. I copied what she did. So I joined the local bar the state bar association. I applied and I graduated from the leadership academy. It was a huge time commitment. I knew that going in, but the connections I made from that helped me build on the networking. That said, you can't be one-sided with your networking, right? So if somebody's being gracious and giving you their time, it's not necessarily that you have to take all of their advice, but you should use the advice that they're giving you and make decisions that show that person that you're appreciative of the time that they've spent. It is a time commitment for somebody to mentor somebody, but if the person enjoys mentoring, they will happily talk to you as long as they think that they're actually making a difference in what you're doing. You don't want to talk to somebody and then you don't follow up with them for 6 months and then you call them again because you need help for this one job opening that you have and you think that they may know somebody. As long as you continue, it's just like with a regular relationship, a regular friendship is just, keeping track of that person and making sure that you're thoughtful and graceful to that person. I think it makes a big difference and people are willing to give their time.
I think you summarize that perfectly. It's like, I feel like sometimes for people early in their career, there's this lack of understanding that there's personal relationships and there's business relationships in terms of what you might talk about or how the interactions are. But at the end of the day, they're just relationships and we're all people. So to your point, you need to nurture it like you would nurture any other relationship, right? To then the level that you want to maintain that. So I think that's a great point. How do you, when you think about your industry, actually I want to back up to the mentor thing first. Who were some of your mentors along the way? And or what, again, 1 to 2 traits, or did they say one line to you at one time that you were like, oh my gosh, that changed the trajectory of something or how you thought about it?
So I think my relationships with my mentors have evolved throughout the years. So initially they may have been mentors and now they're more friends. I think some of the nice things about mentors is let's just use like you're applying for a job. For me specifically, when I apply for a job, for whatever reason, I focus on the skills I don't have as opposed to focusing on the skills that I do have and that I am bringing to the table. So having a mentor that's also in your corner and kind of a cheerleader and can help you where you focus on and, reframe the question for you is really helpful. So I've had actually friends who ended up being mentors who were, I will say when I decided to apply for this job, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I've never been an executive director. And my friend was like, you do this, this, and this, you can do this. I was like, well, I'm just going to go for it. And I'll use the skills I've already acquired in different situations that I can highlight in the interview. So I'm not coming in with executive director experience, but I have budgeting experience. I have all these other things. So having somebody that can help you just realize what you're not seeing or looking at it from another perspective. Some of the best mentors I have are people that are helping you along the way and helping you focus on what is your strengths, what are your strengths, and then helping you work on your weaknesses, right? Because you're never going to be perfect for any job. And sorry, that's not true. You may be perfect for a job, but you may not have all of the skills that they want because no one does. Those are wishful thinking lists that they come up with for the perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. So just really highlighting where you have strengths and then figuring out ways around your weaknesses or things that you can focus on to improve those weaknesses. So you may not have a tech background, but you can watch videos or YouTube videos so that you could say, I know this wasn't something that I've experienced, but prior to the interview, I prepared and this is where I'm at. And having somebody help you through that is really going to gain valuable experience or insights for the job that you're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's I think a big miss that people have is not filling in. It's like employers want to hear, it's not just, and I think that you said this, it's reflective in your own company culture. It's not just, do you have the immediate exact skills? Do you have the applicable skills? And do you have the desire to learn? And it's almost showing employers that you can, number one, draw parallels between skills and experiences, but then also take an initiative to further develop and grow without, on their own. The executive director position that you applied for, like, give me a percentage, like when you read the job description, you were like, I'm 50-50. Should I apply? Should I not? You were 30. Like, what was the hesitation? Like the real inner monologue. And then what was the point that you just said, forget it, I'm going to go for it?
I think my bigger concern was funding and fundraising. That's not something that I am really like, the actual asking people for money. I worked at a legal services. I didn't do that. I didn't ask for money, right? So that was one of my bigger concerns. It's also a huge jump from being a supervising attorney to then managing an entire organization and managing people. And sometimes the hardest part of a job is managing staff and everyone's personalities. So that was my bigger concern. It was probably a 70-30. And then I was just like, well, I'm just going to do this and we'll see what the interview process, what happens during the interview process. Right. And I didn't take that at that time, but now when I tell people when they're interviewing and they ask me for advice, I'm like, you always want to make sure that not only are you a good fit for the job, but is the job a good fit for you? There's been times where I'm sitting in a job interview and I'm like, I don't think this job would work for me for X, Y, and Z, but I'm glad I went through the process of interviewing because it made me realize the things that I was looking for in another job. So I think that's really helpful. I will say during the interview, and he's on my board now, and he was just asking, like, do you think you can do this job? And for whatever reason, I decided to say I wouldn't have applied if I didn't think I could do it. I'm like, and whatever I don't know, I will figure out. I'm sure of that part of it. My inside, I was dying a little bit because I was nervous, but I just kind of said, I can do this. And some days, like I said before, I feel like I can do this with my eyes closed. And some days I'm like, oh my God, this is so much work. So I think it's just feeling confident in yourself that if it's something that you want and you can do, particularly during the interview, then proceeding with trying to get yourself the skills you need to make yourself a better candidate, a better employee at that point.
What is the best part about your job?
Knowing that every day we make a difference in people's lives. So, some days I have to send emails to the staff. I'm like, can you send me success stories? Because we have to, we put them on social media. And then I think this week or last week, somebody sent me one of our success stories, we have a community engagement person that works with the community, especially folks that are facing eviction. And she just walks them through getting emergency rental assistance. And sometimes she helps them get alternative housing. And she was like the squeaky wheel with this. And she was able to help the tenant get $15,000 in back rent and save them from being evicted. So that really helps, I think, a lot, helping our community, particularly when it's a tough time, helps a lot. It keeps me going. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, this is a lot. But then I read the success stories. So I have to remind the staff, I was like, you have to stop for a second, send the success stories, because it makes everybody enjoy, the hard part of it. We were trying, and because some of the staff is just so busy working, they forget to send out their success stories. So we were working on this. We were going to send out Glimmer of the Week, which is something that everybody can enjoy, like a glimmer, instead of a trigger, it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time there's a success story, I share it with the entire staff and with our board, just so everybody remembers what we're doing and why we're doing it. It can get tedious and it can get exhausting, particularly with like eviction prevention when your clients are getting evicted. We're not going to save everybody, but we're going to do our best to help as many as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
So that keeps me going. And just hoping that whatever the work I do leaves people in a better situation than when we started helping them.
I always think about that with, really, you can apply this to any job, but I think about it like in the areas that you're in also. I always think about the ripple effects. I think about this a lot, like even going to I was at Starbucks getting a coffee earlier and I just like made eye contact with somebody and like just said hi, right? Like a total stranger. So whether it's a little action like that or the significant impactful work that you're doing, just think about the ripple effects of affecting one person's life and then how that then spirals out in a positive way to affect even future generations, or helping them get that one break or that one different support that they needed at that moment and what that means for them. So I love that you guys share the wins to keep that purpose. I feel like almost reinvigorates the purpose for what you're doing. What is the underbelly of your job, or the part that people don't want to say out loud?
Particularly right now is whether or not we'll have funding in the next few years. It's the hardest part of the job, is constantly trying to find additional funding. We're well funded right now, but I don't know the answer what's going to happen in 5-10 years.
Is that state, federal funds?
So luckily we do not receive federal funds at this time. We receive funding through Maryland Legal Services Corporation, which is the largest provider of legal services funding in the state. We receive some private donations, not as many as I would prefer, obviously. And then we have different foundations, and it's just a matter of, at one point we were receiving some money from a foundation, and then during COVID, their priorities changed. Luckily, it didn't impact us that much. But it's that constant, making sure that we have funding. And one of the challenges with funding is I may have funding for family law, and that's all I can use with that funding. So sometimes it's difficult because I'm like, well, I really would like to help on this case type, but we're not receiving that funding right now. So it's trying to figure out where we can get that funding. Luckily, our funder gives us a lot of general operating, which means we have a little more flexibility in the types of cases we can take. But a lot of our funds are restricted. So that is challenging, particularly when a lot of the issues for our clients are sometimes a moving target. They have a variety of issues that they need help for. We try to do our best to help them with all of the legal issues they might have within our services, but sometimes there are things that we can't really help with. So we try to help them find someone else. So that's a constant, the funding is always at least for me, one of the more stressful things.
What if somebody is a, let's say, recent graduate or early in the workforce? So the folks that listen to this podcast are range of variety from people that are maybe looking to career transitions, general people that are just looking for different types of inspiration or learning from different people in different career paths, and then obviously people that are earlier in their careers. Let's talk about a little bit about presentation and how you present yourself. So I'm going to ask kind of a two-part question. What are some characteristics that you think people early in their career, skills that they need that put their best foot forward to make a general good first impression? And then let's talk a little bit about, coupled in with that, attire, like how you present yourself. Not only what should they be wearing when they're going on interviews, when they're going to networking events, and then what is important in terms of how they present themselves, whether it's what's coming out of their mouth or how they're talking with people. How would you, what advice would you give?
So I think always act more formal than you think you should. I always tell people I always dress for the job I want, not the job I have. So I always try to be overly dressed, I guess, but always incredibly professional. I think it also comes from sometimes people don't think legal services providers are attorneys or are as professional as private practitioners. So I feel like we are, and we should be treated as such. And I always dress according to that. And I do tell our staff, I understand the world has gotten more informal, but as far as court, the judge should always know that, you're dressed professionally. It's the respect you give not only to the bench, but also the respect you give to your client. You want them to feel like they're coming to you and you know what you're doing, even if you may not always know what you're doing, but dress like you do. So I think that's something, and I'm not saying dress expensive. I'm not saying it has to be, designer or anything like that. It's just do the best you can with what you can afford. Try to wear things that fit properly, not too tight, not too revealing, that sort of thing. I still think you should dress a little more conservative, particularly for job interviews. You don't want them to be focused on what you're wearing or that to be the sticking point for them, or, oh, she came into an interview wearing a sundress. That's not really, you want them to pay attention to what you have to say and how you're saying it. So that would be something I would tell all of our younger listeners, is really think about how you're presenting yourself and make sure you're putting your best foot forward.
And what about outside of attire, just in terms of communication styles? Any guidance or advice there, or areas that as a theme you've noticed? Hey, when we're interviewing applicants, this has been something that has been a turnoff.
I think particularly when you're interviewing, the person should have researched the location or the organization or the job that they're applying for. Go on their website. It's free. Let's take a good amount of time before the interview and prepare yourself as to what they do. One, to make sure it's the job that you want, right? And two, to make sure that it aligns with your values and your mission and what you want to accomplish in life. Sometimes it's clear we'll be sitting on an interview. I'm like, this person has no idea what we're doing. I don't want to waste your time, but I don't, there's questions that can be asked during the interview, but really showing that you've prepared, I think, is incredibly important. It shows that you've taken initiative and that you're curious about the job that you want, and understand that hopefully by that time, that it's a good fit. And if anything changes, it's probably because of what you learned in the interview, not necessarily something that you could have learned before. I think that's really important. And it does come across when you're interviewing somebody if they've done no research.
Mm-hmm. All right, I have one more question before I get to rapid fire. But before I ask my last question, is there anything else that you want to cover or talk about that we haven't yet covered?
Nope, I think I'm good. I'm ready for the rapid fire questions.
All right, perfect. Before rapid fire, my final question is, how do you define success?
I think that evolves. What I thought would be considered successful a few years ago is a little different. I think it's setting goals that you can accomplish And sometimes it's doing things that get you outside of your comfort zone and being successful at that. Sometimes it's doing something that you may have failed at, but realized how to do it differently and be better at it. So that can also be success, I think.
Love it. Perfectly encapsulated. All right, now we're going to go rapid fire, 5-6 questions, just whichever comes to mind first. Brick or stone?
Brick.
Dinner in or dinner out?
Dinner out.
Watch a movie rent a movie, watch a movie at home, go out to a theater.
Watch a movie at home.
Sun or moon?
Sun.
Ocean, mountains?
Ocean.
And last one, astronaut or deep sea diver?
Astronaut.
I know that one is always like a.
I'm scared of heights, but I'm also scared of the dark. Or I'm scared of like being in a tight submarine of some sort and going down. So
Yeah.
I think that's both.
I'm with you. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I enjoyed our conversation. I know the listeners are going to get a ton of value out of it. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. And thank you for listening and including me.
Absolutely. And we will link up the best way to get in touch with you, and then also the resources that you mentioned earlier in the podcast. We'll be sure to link them up in the show notes. So to everyone out there, thank you again for listening. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How Did Her Career Get There? And again, my guest today was Jessica Quincosa. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time.
Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.